I want to show you how to set a custom white balance. This is valuable for a lot of reasons. Right now I'm using the Lumix G9 Mark II, but you could do this on pretty much any camera nowadays. So right here I have a color checker video. This is made by Calibrite, but you could use a wall, you could use the carpet. You just need something that's supposed to be white. And this is their frame of reference. So I just line that up in frame. I'm going to hit the white balance button on the camera here. That opens up my white balance menu. And of course, I've got all the normal things like sunlight, cloud, shade, tungsten. But I like to use the 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are for setting a custom white balance. And you have this little option here that says white set capture. Basically, if you hit up on the D-pad here, you're gonna get a rectangular box on your screen. And you line that up with the white reference and you just hit OK. It'll take a capture and now you've got your white balance set. I usually like to do it twice just to ensure that I've got it exactly the way I want, and it tends to do better on the second time. It seems like the first time it gets close and then the second time it gets it perfect. But that gives you perfect white balance for your lighting. Of course, a lot of people might look at these lights and say, well, this is daylight, so I'm just gonna go dial in my Kelvin, which you could do. So using your Kelvin color temperature here, you can dial in, oh, this light is, 53 or 56 or whatever you think it is or whatever it's rated, and that will get you close to good enough. But the problem is when you introduce another camera. So if I have a different camera here with a different lens, different filters, completely different setup. This is actually the GH6, but it works the same way. You can see here my white balance is not set correctly. So if I do the same thing, I hit the white balance button, opens up my white balance menu. I'm just going to save this as preset 1. I'm going to hit up and then I'm going to go line that up, hit OK. Again, I'll probably do that twice just to be sure. Cool, it's set. One thing that's a good idea once you save a custom white balance is just power cycle the camera. So turn it off, that'll save all those settings. And then when you turn it back on, you're good to go. If for whatever reason you have a power failure or something like that, sometimes those white balance settings can get written over. So if you really want to save it and make sure you don't lose it, it's always best to power cycle the camera. But now, if I go back to my G9 Mark II, and I do the same thing, hit white balance button, go to my preset number 1, hit up, hit OK. I've got that saved. And now these two cameras are perfectly matched in terms of color. So it doesn't matter what lens I'm using. When I pull these both into post-production, they're going to match perfectly. And I don't have to guess what the white balance might be depending on the camera, depending on the lens. It's just set exactly how I'd want. Now, this can be a problem between different models of cameras and especially between different manufacturers. So if you're shooting Canon and Sony side by side, or you're shooting Lumix and Sony side by side, the next step further is to shoot the color chart, which basically ensures that once I start recording this, I'll have exactly what those colors are supposed to be. So I'll record a reference sample on each camera. So that way later on, when I take that into the computer, into post-production, I know that this red is supposed to be a certain hue and saturation, this yellow, this green, and you can match cameras much better by having accurate color references because you know what this green or this blue are supposed to be. So it doesn't matter what camera you're filming with, you know that that blue is supposed to be a certain blue and you can make all your cameras match. That's a step further that I don't always do because oftentimes I'm shooting within the same kind of ecosystem, all Lumix or even all GH6s or something like that. But if you are using Sony and Canon and Arri and Red and everything side by side, that color science between those different manufacturers is going to vary. And it's a really good idea just to shoot these color chip charts just to make sure you know exactly what the color is supposed to be. But bare minimum, always do a custom white balance. Even if you're shooting raw, even if you think it's just one camera, it doesn't matter. It's always good to know exactly what white is supposed to be based on your lighting, based on your scene, and that way you never mess it up.